right, so let's move on to 1984. Show concept is from West Side Story. And once again, I'm going to put you on the spot. Sorry, Shorty, as one of the only staff members that we have on the call at this time. Can you talk a little bit about the show concept, West Side Story, 1984?
Well, that's not true. Michael's on the call too, and he actually wrote some of it. So
there we go.
I'm sure he can add to it. I mean, it. I remember this. I remember hearing the story of Michael pitching, doing West Side Story, and Hop was all excited because they're going to play Mambo and they're going to do all this stuff. And I remember Michael saying, "Now we're starting with Maria," and people in the room at the T-Neck house there are looking at him like he's got lobsters crawling out of his ears. But it was a logical next step because obviously, we could treat that in a way that no one else at the time could, because we had Barb, to pull off the solos and that were so key to making it work. But the Michael always said there are two ways you could get somebody's attention, and that's to scream or whisper. So we decided to whisper to start out the show, and but within like 30 seconds, the horn line gives you full volume, and then they're back down. And it was, I will say, and the other guys can chime in, Rich, Michael, it was a disgusting display of control by that brass section. They had really come into their own, and like the year before they were great, but they were now something really, really special. So, but the other thing, I think the music lent itself so much to the whole core concept. The color guard, when we have 30 Marias and 30 Marias and no Tony, and they had now become their own entity. And while the drum line was still looking to find its place, they were so musical and allowed the brass to speak and allowed the show to really come to life. But beyond that, it was and it was remarkable because we pulled that show off on about 4 hours of rehearsal each day due to all the bus breakdowns, which I'm sure you'll get together. But am I missing anything, Michael? I was still kind of just a horn tech guy, and you were in a little bit more because you wrote the vocal part for America, right?
Yeah, just that little transition in there. But no, I don't think you missed a lot there, Shorty. I think some of the fun things for me were when I got to go into that house and listen to those guys talk about how they put that show together. For example, Jimmer, it was either America or the end of America, but he patterned that after, I don't know if it was Stan Kenton or if it was another jazz band. And he's like, this is kind of how I came up with it. And he played a record for me that was meant to be played at 33 and he put it on 78. And it's like, this is, kind of the inspiration to that. It is one of those little tricks I learned from his. I mean, of course you can do that all digitally now, but it's like, God, it was really cool to hear how he came up with some of that stuff.
Shorty, you talked about, Barb solo in, to start the show, and you were able to pull it off, because of her, amazing talents. And she also does a solo, I Have a Love. I just want to hear more from this group about just being around that greatness. Her solos from 84 are just stuff of legend, right? Everyone always talks about Barb's solo in 1984. They're synonymous with one another. So I just want to hear more from this audience about the solos.
Let me go for that, because if you remember, anybody that was on the sideline, finals was great, but prelims, the I Have a Love, the end of the I Have a Love solo, da dee da da, and she flipping nailed it. I don't know if any of you guys remember it, but it was perfect. She did it great at finals, but in prelims, oh my God, tears came to my eyes.
And she was sick in finals.
Yeah.
The thing about Barb though was, she was an extraordinary human being. And I think that's what led to her being able to do the things that she did, with playing and with the show and all that. I mean, it's, you're lucky if you come across, one person like that in your life, let alone 4 or 5 through your entire life. But she was an extraordinary person. And again, I think that's what led her to be able to do that.
Shorty, you were a great segue to emotion. I just remember we had a day off and we went to Six Flags, pick a state. I think we're in Georgia. I don't know.
Georgia.
And I remember, at least from the drum staff, somebody told us that during the day, you need to go learn the lyrics to this song. And when you come back, you have to be able to know the lyrics. And the whole point was that as the drum corps, in order to produce that sound, we had to know the lyrics, understand what the emotion was behind the lyrics in order to play the lyrics. And I remember running around Great Adventure that whole day, asking every stranger, hey, do you know the rest of the words? Hey, what are these words? Hey, do you know these words? Literally talking to strangers in line while I sat there trying to learn the lyrics so that we can come back to perform with emotion.
And Shorty, you kind of alluded to bus breakdowns. I know you guys had several bus breakdowns throughout the summer tour.
A few.
Just a few. It just amazes me when, you know, I hear about all these bus breakdowns and no food on tour, and yet you guys still win your second DCI World Championship title. I don't know. Talk to me a little bit about all of your bus breakdowns. Did anyone actually count how many bus breakdowns, or you guys just lost count?
I started out on bus 3, and when the bus 3 was the first one to break down, I think. Or did we even make it out of New Jersey that year? I don't think we did. And I ended up switching to bus 1 because they had to jam us all from 3 buses to 2 or 4 buses to 3 or whatever. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare.
It was supposed to be like an 8-hour bus ride, and it ended up being like 26.
And no air conditioning, right, on your buses?
We used to sing on the drum bus on the side of the road again, because we would wake up and we'd be on the side of the road again.
I think Michael Klesch was a member of the transportation team that year for a little while, weren't you?
No, I'm not going to talk about that because when I do, I don't sleep for 4 nights after that.
I remember.
No, you don't, Michael Jones. I'm going to change the subject. Michael Jones, when I saw you, all I heard in my mind was Tom Hannum saying Michael Jones. I can't wait to tell him tomorrow that I saw you tonight.
When we talk, I mean, you talk about nicknames, Eric. My name was Michael Jones. That was my first name.
That was your first name.
For the whole 20 years I was affiliated with the Corps. But
that was how we knew you when you were on staff in '89. It was always just
Michael Jones, one name. But Eric, you know,
one name too, Michael.
I suffer from that too.
Exactly, Anjanellis. That's right.
That's right. It was always Anjanellis.
Right. That's right.
And in front of everybody, I just want to thank you because when I came in at 11 years old, you were one of the first people I met, and you took me right under your wing, and you were always so kind to me. So thank you.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about being labeled as just Michael Jones. I think I even texted you when I was talking about putting this together that I only know you as Michael Jones. I always say Michael Jones, like it's just one name. That's it.
Yeah. I think Zingali, that was Zingali's fault.
It hurts me if I just say Mike, or if I call you Mike Jones. It doesn't feel right.
I probably wouldn't answer because I wouldn't know you were talking to me.
All right, talk to me a little bit about I mean, you guys are broken down on the side of the road all the time. How did you guys rehearse? I mean, it doesn't sound like I just hear these different stories that you guys just had limited rehearsals. And again, you somehow pull off your second DCI championship title. You know, talk to me a little bit about your limited rehearsals.
I think we spent the entire season just working on the exit. I felt like we did, especially when Mr. Microphone showed up, we did nothing but work on the exit just for hours and hours and hours. I don't know. Was I the only one there? No.
That's how we would start the morning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And from a color guard perspective, we were always told to keep our equipment with us and not put it on the truck so that we could rehearse when we got somewhere.
Yeah. But Eric, I think it's one of the differences, like, you know, between then and now. No one was getting off the bus saying, I didn't get enough sleep. No one was getting off the bus saying, we're rehearsing too many hours. I mean, you were there to rehearse and get better and perform. Like that was what we did. So, you know, we broke down and we had peanut butter for breakfast and all of that stuff. But it was like you get off the bus and you practice, and you didn't complain about it.
And we didn't get floor time either. Hardly ever got floor time.
No.
Right.
I remember more
Was that
time.
even a term back then, Ann?
Huh?
Was that even a term back there? Floor time?
No, rarely. No, I don't think so. I think it was like oh, hey, we're going to get an hour on the floor. Like, oh my gosh, that's like Christmas, Yeah. But man, we used to roll off the bus rehearsal.
I think something for me that sticks with me is from 80 to 84, the talent in the line got better. The talent in the horn line, the talent in the drum line, the talent in the guard just got better. And so, yeah, we complained about stuff, but you're right. Like Michael said, you got off the bus and you just went to work and you did the best you could, coming back to that best concept with what you had. And the talent just kept getting better. The horn line was better. Just everybody just kept getting better. It helped.
Yeah, Zingali was always yelling, "What are you shitting me?" Right? Yeah. All the time. And we would always hear same thing one more time again. In that order. Right? Yeah. So you just did what you were told.
I think that's something that I noticed, and I brought up last year when I was teaching the final version of the cadets, is the mental toughness that the three-peat members had. It was a toughness that today's they don't have it. Still in August, still missing, still like not stopping where you'd be told to stop, or not doing little things. And it was because you were tough enough to receive that instruction. However abhorrent it might seem these days, you guys expected it, and you expected to have it make you better. And that's something that is not available anymore. That three-peat core, I think, is the toughest group of people I've ever been around. Mm-hmm.
And we were old school drum corps people. It was the time. That's what we were used to, being yelled at, cursed at. So, I mean, we were tough because that's the period we were in.
Or on occasion, Michael Jones, humiliated.
Hello.
Yeah, one thing that I know about, like, all of the panelists and other members that marched in the 70s and 80s, all of you guys marched like 10, 11, 12, 13 years. So it's just, drum corps was instilled in you. I think a lot of the kids nowadays, not to go off subject, but a lot of the kids nowadays just march, 1 or 2 years. So they don't have that mental toughness and that background, that experience of marching, multiple years. One thing I actually wanted to, it's not even a question, I just wanted to make an observation. I remember, I'm a bit of a fanboy of the 1984 show. I was just a 12-year-old kid. And I went to one of the early shows. I tagged along with my brother. He was in high school marching band at the time. So he and his friends went to the show. I didn't really respect what I was seeing. But the thing that I remember was Rich Armstrong's wingspan, his arms out there conducting. I mean, that's still a vivid memory with me 40 years later. Like if I was a drum corps, owned a drum corps, and I went to the drum corps draft, I would draft Rich Armstrong #1 overall just because of your wingspan.
I can admit this. I was a terrible conductor. I absolutely, Michael Klesch was a far better conductor, and he tried to show me how to do that. And I'm better now than I was then. And I did what I knew how to do, but I would conduct the whole thing totally different.
His knees were higher. I'll give you that.
Yeah, but you know what, Richard? One thing you did is you wore your emotions as the music, how it made you feel. And that was very helpful, at least for the color guard, to really kind of see, because that emotion, guard people, we're more of an emotional performer, but to watch you conduct was always, could just tell you were in it, and your facial expressions, and you didn't just do the standard, out to the side, up and down. You let your whole body go.
Watching Michael the year before. I mean, when you think about the transition of drum majors from 80 to that point, some were more just keep the beat, keep the time. And Michael comes in and does the mass, and it's just straight up musical discussion every time he gives a correction. It was just a different approach for the horn line. And, that's what I mean, those guys stood behind me. I mean,
But
to
Rich,
me,
it's
go
not
ahead.
fair to say that you were not a good conductor, because you were. And Jimmer said to me the year that I was doing that one of the first things he said to me was, he always called me Mr. Klesch. Mr. Klesch, one of the true measures of a conductor is the ability for the group to play together. And you made that happen. You absolutely were a great conductor.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. I knew how to watch Tom's feet and his hands until, what was it? Not Whitewater, DCI North. When something happened, Tom pulls his sticks up. Everybody in the snare line pulls their sticks up, and I'm like, how do I stay with that? I don't know if you remember that show or not.
DCI Canada.
But that was hard to do that year with everybody split apart.
Yeah, but Rich, just as someone way on the other end of the line, having you in the line and then having you up on the podium, half the time I wasn't even looking at your hands. I learned how to emote through the horn by watching your face, your eyebrows. Man, the expressions that you would make up there on that podium were the things that I could look at and say, oh, that's how I was supposed to feel. Okay, and I could lock into that. I don't know if you knew that or not.
No. All the stories I don't remember half the stories you've already mentioned tonight, because I think I just was so into what we were doing at the time and it was hard. I think about where I started in 80 and 83 playing lead baritone. I was not a Warren Corman. I wasn't those guys. I had to work hard to play that line, and just trying to do what Donnie wanted us to do. You just were always in. But I appreciate that. I enjoyed conducting the best I could. I enjoyed the both of those years were fun.
Yeah, and also, to be fair, I had done that the year before, and I had all of those voices in my head, the Zingalis and Sylvester and Tom and George and all that stuff. And then there's Rich in that position, and this poor guy has me in his head. You more than rose to the occasion, Rich, believe me.
Well, it was fun.
All right. I want to move on to August 4th, 1984. We're in Whitewater, Wisconsin. Something happened that day, and I think Tom Smith had a front row seat to a certain event. And if you can, Tom, just walk us through that day and enlighten us.
Okay. Well, I can tell you this. That day we were on, I don't know what time it was, in the middle of the afternoon prelims, and it was hot. I mean, it was very humid, very hot, and just muggy. Prelims was fine. Everything was good. And we were always much better as far as marching goes when we were on AstroTurf. And Whitewater, the grass was just a little bit long that year. So we come back that night for finals, and everything is going great. And the next thing I know, I'm involved in a train wreck in the middle of the Z-Pull.
And let me stop you right there. I'm going to play a judge's recording. It's Frank Levy. He was the GE brass guy at the time. I'll just play from the company front. So give me a thumbs up if you get the audio. Here we go.
Yes. Watch out. Oh my God. Sorry, Garfield. Hope everybody's okay. I hope everybody's all right.
Okay.
Okay.
So continue with your story.
So that morning, and it's the only time I ever heard him say it, but when we lined up for prelims and they announced us, they said the defending world champion Garfield Cadets. That's how we were announced when we went on a prelim. And I'm sitting there and I was like, man, did you hear? I mean, it kind of sank in. I'm sitting there going, so I was prelim show. I was like on the top of the world. I was like, awesome. Oh, how quickly we fall from grace, me especially, when I ended up on flat on my back in that show that night. And it happened quite often. A lot of times in the Z-Pull, at the very end of that Z-Pull, if the guys at the far end would not keep their spacing, if they'd let it collapse some, we'd end up on each other's feet. And it was almost like you were floating on air, because you'd step on somebody's foot and they'd pull you backwards, and then somebody'd end up on your foot, and you just rolled with the punches, and it would always come out and everything was great. And that night it wasn't great. So as soon as I hit the ground, Rich Schmuck, who we mentioned earlier, he's the next one in front of me. As soon as I knew I was on the way down, I hit the ground and rolled. And then I jumped up, and I'm just looking for a spot. I don't even know if I ended up in the right spot, but there was a hole. I jumped in the hole, and I'm looking, and I see the crowd all going. And I'm like, the amazing thing was, I never get to see the crowd because our shakos were 2 fingers above the bridge of our nose. Man, I can see that's because I don't have a shako on tonight. So my shako got launched somewhere, and it was one of the marching judges came up and hands me my shako, and I immediately snatched that shako from him, put it on my head, got it to 2 fingers. We turned left and left the field. I was like, you got to be kidding me. That was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. But how quickly we fall from grace. I thought, man, this is the most awesome thing. We were announced as the world champions, and that night I'm flat on my back in the middle of Whitewater, Wisconsin. Nuts.
Now I hear stories, over time, stories become legends. And so I hear stories about kids broke their leg and some kid left tour, or so straighten the record. How many kids went down? How many guys went down? And did you all, I think you guys just kind of picked an open spot and just finished the formation?
When we ended, we were all vertical. We were all vertical. Everybody had an instrument in their hand. And I may have been the only one that shako got launched far enough that I couldn't get it on the way back to the line. I would say there may have been 6 of us that went down. And I was at the end of the train wreck. Like I said, as soon as I was on, I knew what was happening. I hit the ground and rolled, and then it was just, I was like, what in the world was that all about? It was crazy.
I remember I was sitting up in the stands, like right in the center, and it was so packed up there. I was kind of sitting like with my legs to the right. So I was watching that end of the Z-Pull, and I don't know who the first one that went down. Was it you? Like who?
No, I was the last one.
So I don't know who went down first, but I remember it. And I saw the whole thing. I saw everybody get back in, which I thought was freaking amazing. And then I ran down there after we were done, and it wasn't like you said, there was no broken legs. There was a lot of broken horns, like a lot of bent horns, but there was not there was one person that may have twisted something or whatever, but not crazy. But it was, the recovery was amazing. That's what I remember about it.
Yeah, and you guys got first place in ensemble visual that night. Or not, you got a perfect score, I think.
Cheryl, do you remember the color guard was totally in the dark? We saw something going on with the crowd, and we heard a lot of
we heard it.
Totally clueless what was going on. We were like, what is that? We didn't have any clue.
We were circled up.
Yeah.
Had no
and
idea.
We were like, oh, people fell down? Really?
As a result of that train wreck, what was done differently the next day? I'm sure Zingali and Sully were on your butts, right?
Really nothing. I mean, it was really one of those self-critiquing things. It was like, You see what happens when you let the space collapse. You have got to make sure that you're, and we're supposed to be on our toe. We're supposed to be, when we're backing up, heels come up, we stay up on those toes to back up. And that really, from that point on, got drilled into us, so that if you're on your toes and you're backing up, you're not gonna end up in anybody else's toes. So especially at the very end of that pull where we had the greatest distance to go.
Tom, didn't they take and reroute it just a little bit, if I recall, so it wasn't a straight follow the leader?
Yes, they actually pulled the top of the arc back a little bit deeper, and then we made a little bit more of a turn, and then we would flatten out. So it actually went further north up the field and then flattened, then came around and flattened out. Yes.
Right.
So from a marching standpoint, and Chris and Shorty, you're probably better at this. I know, as you know, Garfield Cadet, Bergen County Cadets, whatever you want to call us, drumline, hornline, color guard, they were always on top of us. We would just be in our blocks and we would practice our initial step off. And you really had to trust that the person in front of you and behind you were going to do their step off right. Because if they didn't, that was the consequence, right? Or if you didn't keep your spacing, that was the consequence. And when you have drums involved, then everybody had their spacing. And I don't know how many times the bass line went down. I lost count. I've had to jump over people in the past. But that technique that they were really trying to perfect is what helped us get from point A to point B. And you really just trusted the other person to do what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things we used to talk about in critiques. And I remember even talking about it, in the brass critique, is how difficult the drill was. Because the complaint from people was, well, you're so tight, it's not that hard to do. And we're like, no, it's because it's so tight is what makes it hard to do. They thought, well, you're closer, so it makes everything easier. But it was the individual responsibilities. And we never in those days got enough credit for the responsibilities of the individual for how dangerous some of those moves were. I mean, I'm sure, Michael, you remember us talking it up and, talking about, look, we're here and we're trying to get here where everybody else is just trying to get here. So can you see if we don't quite get it, we're still ahead? We used to have those discussions all the time with just what you're talking about, Dawn.
I can still do a perfect 8 to 5.
Oh, we all can.
We all can.
But Eric, one of the things they did do following that catastrophe is they put us in a block at 2-step intervals, and we would do these sprints across the field,
up and down the field,
fast. And people fell, but part of it was learning to trust each other, and the other part was learning how to fall and get out of the way. So we did kind of incorporate that into rehearsal. Yeah. No,
that's actually, really good. I mean, that was a very big lesson learned, I think. You learned from that experience. So
if I can ask a question, so specifically for Tom and for Michael Jones, Dawn also as a drummer, you talked to Tom about the tension of being on the tick system as a drummer and having a judge in your face going check, check, check. How did it feel going to the new scoring system in '84 and you didn't have to worry about that anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, we were still struggling, I guess, as a drum line. That's what I remember. Got beat up pretty good. I mean, such a long time ago. I think it was, since it was more subjective, I guess maybe it wasn't as bad because you were taking into account the writing and how the writing worked with the brass and there was more of an overall sense instead of an individual judge looking for ticks. But my memories of marching is probably different than just about everyone on here, just because we struggled all the years I marched, and we had some conflict between the brass and the percussion. There was definitely some stuff that went on. I remember warming up. I think it was in Whitewater. Maybe it was that same show, and the Blue Devils came over, or someone came over and watched us warm up, and we were just chowing, and it just felt like these corps were laughing at us. Like it was, it was tough. It was tough. It was. I think I don't know how you feel, Michael, but it was like you're marching in these great corps, like the horn line's phenomenal, the visual. I mean, we're setting new standards in show design and and the visual activity and stuff. And man, we were just, and I think from our end, it was, I don't know, we were on a different bus, I guess.
Yeah.
I think the 89 horn line understands exactly what you're saying, but in reverse.
The
thing is that in 84, Paul, they were trialing that new system. So we were still on the tick system, but they were trialing that new system. So for example, in finals that year, under that new system, we scored big, but under the tick system, you know, we were still, but the thing about the drum line is, for me, until we started to get good, it was always, but y'all can't do what we're doing. I don't care how many ticks the judges write on that paper. Y'all can't do this. Y'all can't do letter L in prologue, in Rumble prologue. Y'all can't do the Luli section in America. So you could talk all you want, but y'all are still marching up and down the 50. You know, so that was the redeeming quality for us always.
And I mean, and even in 85, and I know we're not there yet, they took the bass line, the cymbal line, they put us in a circle, but it was a rotating circle. So we had this parabola, which was rotating and moving up, and we had to end up right in the pit. So we had to keep a perfect circle while marching, while moving, and a bass drummer who can't see over his head and a cymbal player who can't see behind him. Yet we had to trust everybody was moving this parabola. Who does that?
The other thing to keep in mind, like, for as much as I know the drum guys remember the struggles, it was because of the writing and what you were willing to do that allowed the brass and the music and the whole ensemble to speak the way it did. And that takes a lot of trust out of everybody involved, you know, the writers, the teachers and everything. Because the brass section, if that had been a traditionally written drum book and a traditionally performed drum book, it would not have allowed the shows to come alive the way they did.
Yeah, in 84, the drum line was completely split up.
Yeah, well, we did that back and forth thing with the in America with the drums and the two separate.
The quads and the snares. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to DCI finals. You guys won your second championship in a row. I know, you know, one of the things that's kind of echoed throughout this call is, you know, how we were all taught, and even when I marched, and I think that's the lesson given up until now, even, or up until last year, is, you know, winning isn't everything. It's the lesson that you learned along the way. And I think, you know, everyone talks about being humble, and, you know, that's kind of like the cadets, right? We're very humble core. It's not always about winning. That being said, you guys won in 82 or 83. And so here's your opportunity for 2 in a row. As the season was progressing, did you guys feel, you know, 83, you almost went undefeated. 84, you had some losses along the way. And of course, your bus breakdowns and equipment truck breakdowns, lack of food. Did you guys think that winning was a chance in 84?
I don't know that I ever thought about it that way, actually.
Right.
I mean, they worked us so hard during the time that we had time to practice that we were just trying to just get better and improve. I'll speak for myself. I never really thought about it. Just didn't cross my mind. I just knew that if we all pulled together, we had a show, we had good staff. And so if everybody did what they were supposed to do and did what we were told, we'd be up there. But I never really thought about a repeat. I mean, you hear people yell it, you hear people say it, but it was never in the front of my head, you know, while I'm practicing, like, oh, we got to practice hard to win. Never crossed my mind. Plus, Peggy would have beat us up if we did.
I just know that the last week we ended up in a dry city. We ended up with the crappiest facilities at the school that we had to bus the corps over, and the stadium was a Blue Devil stadium that we practiced at. That I think I remember that correctly. And I for the life of me, we just won DCI the year before, and we can't get better places to practice the last week. And I remember I always marched in the back of the corps for going onto the field after the show. And George came up to me at the back of the field and he told me to go tell them to make sure they don't act stupid and be prepared to lose. And I told him, I am not telling them anything. They're the cadets. They will do what they're supposed to do. They don't need to be told. I also did not believe that we were going to come out anywhere but first. Just because, you just got done watching the Corps do what they did that week. What they had to overcome that week, it's just bad fields. I mean, we had bad field in 83 at the last week. Holes and it's just how did that happen? Why did that happen? And so, once again, the resilience of the drum corps, the talent of the drum corps, they did what they were supposed to do. They came out and they played that show and marched that show like they were supposed to. And it's kind of what I take from the whole thing. It's like people just did what they were supposed to do.
One would say we're so talented, but I don't think we're as talented as we had grit. Nobody was willing to give up. No, everyone was just going to persevere through whatever the circumstance was. Nobody knew any different.
I don't think you can mention 84 without mentioning Death Camp.
Oh, God.
84 Death Camp was a pivotal moment. We had that moment there where the staff was all kinds of aggro and they wanted to leave and Rich said, fuck no, we're going to keep rehearsing. And we kept going with ensemble without a staff. We knew what we had and we didn't give a fuck about anything else.
Was that Morristown?
No, Middletown, South.
Middletown, New Jersey.
That's also the year that George would come out and go up to that school we stayed at and change 20, 30 pages of drill.
Yeah.
At the end of the rehearsal, go, no, I liked it the other way.
Yeah.
And that happened several times. And you had a group that, I still think that book that was written that year, the percussion book, the horn book, if somebody was to take that and redo it today in today's way of doing drum corps, it would stand at the top because of the way it was scored and the way it worked on the clarity of that book. And I think there's something special about the way Jimmer and Michael and those guys and Tom wrote the music. It took care of itself.
And Bob Morrison.
Yeah, well, everybody, of course. I don't want to leave anybody out. I think it's just one of the great books of all time. It worked.
And I also think too, George Zingali, I don't know, for some reason, 84, he went way out on a limb. I don't think he kind of pulled it back in for the years following, and you can chime in, anybody, but I don't think he wrote risky like he did in 84 in any of the years following. I mean, the drill was crazy, but the risks that he took that year with the divisions and the separations and the fronts and the backs, I think George Hopkins and Donnie used to run ensemble, and I think they really started to solidify the ensemble technique that was going to be, take the corps forward from that point, because they were figuring out stuff in terms of how we had to listen, how we had to not listen, who we had to watch. So, that was a great extension visually, which, it forced us to do some things musically and just listening too.
Mm-hmm.
It's ironic you guys talk about, the struggles that you had in 84 and, how you went on to winning. And, if I made a word cloud of some of the words that you guys just said, talent, grit, perseverance, I mean, it's a big compliment to what you guys accomplished in 84 and winning it all. Just amazing to me.
On the next episode of For Holy Name Shall Always Be, Part 3, 1985 DCI World Champions.
Order out of chaos is how Jeremiah starts. You have the one voice out there, everybody's doing their own thing, and the voice speaks out and it brings all this chaos into order. Fans yelling at me, "You are not gonna get there." And I started praying.
With all the mixed meters, you didn't know is this a right foot step off or left foot step off?
The final practice with put in all these different sounds. It's very comedic.
We were told to keep your eyes on Rich. Keep your eyes on Rich. And I saw Rich start the song, and then he did this. No. And he restarted it.
And I just double pumped, and it was a mistake.
Your final thoughts on the three-peat and your experience as a cadet?
The people that made it special. The people that we marched with, people that we stood next to.
It was woodshedding something, breaking things down, making mistakes, and moving forward.
The people were the best thing.
Be the best that you can be.
I mean, those 3 years, there was a tremendous amount of knowledge that was imparted to us.
Those 3 years produced so many movers and shakers of the activity.
For holy name shall always be.